Good Monday morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Right now on Morning News Now. Inside the surge, COVID records are being broken this morning. Florida is now seeing more positive tests than ever before as cases and hospitalizations surge across the country. We'll take you to some of the nation's hardest hit areas as top health officials warn the worst is yet to come. She's back. Breaking news out of Tokyo. Gymnastics legend Simone Biles will return to competition tomorrow after missing several events as she grappled with a condition called the twisties, saying she was unable to tell up from down. We'll preview Tuesday's balance beam finals as Team USA Gymnastics takes home another gold just this morning. Pushing forward, just hours ago, that sweeping bipartisan infrastructure package championed by the Biden administration was formally introduced in the Senate, with debate picking up this week. We'll hear from Majority Leader Schumer on when this landmark piece of legislation could head to the president's desk. And a consumer alert this morning for all of you looking to fit in a summer trip in the coming weeks. Beware, vacation rental scams are on the rise. We'll show you the red flags to look out for to keep your getaway as stress-free as possible. And now you had a little getaway because it was your birthday.
Right, and that's why I stay at hotels.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't have to deal with those scams.
It might be old-fashioned, but hey, it works.
Exactly.
Good to be back.
Oh my goodness. Well, we are so happy that you're back with us. Welcome back. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
Of course. Now, the U.S. has surpassed 35 million coronavirus cases since the start of the pandemic, and that's where we pick it up this morning.
Yeah, health experts are predicting cases and hospitalizations will continue to rise as the Delta variant spreads and millions remain unvaccinated. Dr. Anthony Fauci says new lockdowns are unlikely, but he offered this assessment of what's to come.
I think we have enough of the percentage of people in the country, not enough to crush the outbreak, but I believe enough to not allow us to get into the situation we were in last winter. But things are going to get worse.
The situation is already getting worse in many hospitals across the country. NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster is in hard-hit Nebraska. NBC News reporter Vaughn Hilliard is in Florida, which is now leading the country in new cases. Good to have you both with us this morning. Shaq, let's start with you. You're outside a hospital in Omaha that has a 25-bed COVID unit. What are they seeing right now?
Well, just last week, Joe, that 25-bed COVID unit was actually full at capacity. They say that has tapered off a little bit, but they're continuing to see that increase in hospitalizations. And it's the same story that we've been talking about for weeks now. You have the increase in cases. And here in Omaha, you've been seeing a 140% increase in cases in just the past 2 weeks. That then leads to the increase in hospitalizations. And then those unfortunate stories of lives being lost. Here in Nebraska, there was a sheriff's deputy that passed away over the weekend. There was also a 20-year-old in Lincoln, Nebraska, that also lost his life to COVID-19. So that is the situation here. You have doctors continuing to say, push the vaccine, get that vaccine. That is what is going to eventually lead to the end of this surge. Joe?
And Vaughn, where you are in Florida on Friday, the state reported its highest one-day total in new cases since the start of the pandemic. Even though we now have a vaccine, what has the impact been on hospitals there in the Sunshine State?
Well, here in Florida, just overnight here, the AP is reporting the latest data from Florida to the Department of Health and Human Services is that they here in the state of Florida overnight broke the hospitalization record compared to any previous peak here. This is the fourth wave. And yet what you are seeing in cities like here in Jacksonville, this hospital, 165 COVID patients alone, but across the city of Jacksonville, you are seeing, compared to the other highest hospitalization record to date here in the city, it's at 165% of what that previous record here is. That is the extent to which these medical officials are telling us that the Delta variant is running rampant among the unvaccinated and leading people to enter into these hospitals. And you said it, 100,000 new cases here across the United States on Friday. And we heard from Dr. Fauci just say yesterday it's only going to get worse. And we have heard that at a local level. You are seeing this number, when you are seeing that trajectory here, only escalate here. And yes, we've seen an uptick of some folks getting vaccinated at the same time. That isn't going to stop people from getting here infected in the immediate timeline.
You know, and all this begs the question, what are elected leaders doing about these rising cases? Shaq, Nebraska's governor, is pushing back on CDC guidance when it comes to masking. Why is he doing that? And what is he trying to do to try and reduce the number of cases there?
Yeah, you heard really strong pushback against that CDC guidance last week from Governor Ricketts here in Nebraska. He's saying that Nebraska will not adopt that mask guidance. And he actually released a statement. I'll read a little bit from it right now. And he says that the CDC announcement only furthers the distrust that many have with the CDC and does not help to encourage more people to get the vaccines that are helping bring the pandemic to a conclusion. Over the weekend, he ended some of his emergency orders that you saw in place in the state of Nebraska. The governor pushing those vaccines and also emphasizing later in that statement that his expectation, despite the surge that you're seeing, his expectation once we get to the fall is that schools reopen fully for that in-person learning. Joe?
Vaughn, here is some reason for optimism. We're starting to see a rise in vaccination rates in some hot spots. What are you seeing there across the South?
Exactly. Going along with that correlation here, we're talking about 40 plus states that have doubled their number of COVID cases here over the last 2 weeks. At the same time, this is clearly leading to an influx of individuals coming to get their initial shots. We were over in nearby Georgia on Saturday at a drive-through line where we met Tia Rowe. I want to let you listen to my very question. You've had it available to you for months. Why now? What took you these many months to finally decide to get the shot?
Because I saw the cases are rising. I think because I've seen more people of my family and friends have taken it and they're okay. So that kind of like led me to think, okay, I could take it and I'll be okay.
The states of Alabama and Missouri, they have more than doubled their vaccination rate over the last 3 weeks. Here in the state of Florida, about 78% increase. In Texas, 66%. It's a step in the right direction, Joe.
Certainly is. We'll have to see how much more of a difference that can make. Shaq and Vaughn, thank you both for kicking us off this morning. We appreciate it.
The Delta variant is bringing up new concerns also for nursing homes. They were the sites of some of the deadliest outbreaks during the pandemic. Now there are new calls to get more workers in those nursing homes vaccinated. Here's NBC News correspondent Kathy Park.
Joe and Savannah, good morning to you both. As you know, nursing homes were once COVID hotspots, but with the Delta variant taking hold all across the country, health experts are sounding the alarm, saying that the vulnerable population living in these facilities are at risk once again. Worries over a dangerous and deadly repeat of COVID outbreaks at nursing homes and long-term care facilities as the Delta variant tightens its grip.
It's very scary. Are we going to go through this all over again?
In Mississippi, where infections are soaring, health officials say there have been outbreaks in 72 nursing homes. And according to a local health officer in Indiana, 7 residents died from the virus at an unidentified facility where less than half of the staff was vaccinated. Nationwide, more than 80% of residents in nursing homes are now fully vaccinated. Among staff, the number is around 58%, and experts worry the unvaccinated group will contribute to the spread.
And then, we have a frail elderly population who got vaccinated very early. They may have some waning immunity, and put all of that together, and there's really just very large vulnerability for nursing homes.
Jody Merritt has to get tested twice a week before visiting her 83-year-old mother at a Florida nursing home.
What is your biggest fear moving forward? They're going to go back to locking us out again. That was the most horrific year of my life. The isolation is the worst.
But the trends we're seeing now is a major shift from last year. The New York Times reporting that after vaccine rollouts from late December to early February, cases in nursing homes fell more than 80%, and the number of deaths dropped 65%. But back in Florida, growing challenges for people like Jody, caught in the vaccine divide.
It's frustrating because they don't realize that their behaviors are keeping us from our family members.
And just last week, 60 major health organizations signed a statement supporting a vaccine mandate for healthcare workers and those working in long-term care facilities. Savannah, Joe?
All right, Kathy Park, thank you so much.
A major milestone in the UK. Starting today, American visitors won't need to quarantine as long as they're fully vaccinated. NBC News foreign correspondent Matt Bradley joins us now from London's Heathrow Airport. So, Matt, I'm guessing you've already seen some emotional arrivals there today. What's the mood like right now? What are travelers telling you?
Yeah, guys, good morning. I mean, you guys remember that movie, Love Actually, the opening when they were in Heathrow Airport? They're talking about everybody greeting each other. You saw the movie, I think. It was like that. It really was, in real life. There was a lot of tears, a lot of emotions. We actually spoke with one young woman who's been living in the States. She's a British citizen. She's been there for 3 years, and she hadn't seen her mom in that time. And she was so relieved to be back. Here's what she told us.
It's so overwhelming. I've been really on edge for the last couple of days. I didn't know what it was going to be like coming in, and like I said, we haven't seen each other in 3 years, so that was really overwhelming. But it's a really good feeling, and I'm home, and that feels so good.
And, you know, that was just one of many. I mean, there were a lot of really emotional scenes today. A lot of people who already had booked their tickets and they had been planning on doing that 10-day quarantine. And now they were just so relieved to not have to be stuck in a hotel. Some people who are on business trips who had been budgeting in that 10-day quarantine because they had to come to Britain. Now they say they're going to spend that time sightseeing. Guys?
Yeah, love the Love Actually reference there. It is important to note some requirements still exist for fully vaccinated visitors, including testing before and after arrival. But the rollback rules are still good news, and not just for travelers, but I understand for airlines. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, airlines everywhere have been suffering, but especially here, they've been suffering also from they've been criticizing the government. The airlines felt, and a lot of the travel industry felt, really singled out in terms of the restrictions that they had to endure throughout the pandemic. And as things have gotten better in the last couple of months, the travel industry here has been very, very vocal in their criticism of some of these lingering government restrictions. Now it seems the Delta variant, that really troubling new variant, that has silenced some of those critics. But it seems as though this was a big, big boom for the travel industry and for Heathrow itself, which is right behind me. We spoke with the CEO of Heathrow, and here's what he had to say.
Getting the US in particular reconnected to the UK is a massive step ahead for us. We're still not back to normal yet. We still have about 35 flights from the US a day. Normally we'd have about 120.
So, you know, they still got a long way to go. They're still going to be ramping up, scaling up all of those flights. But guys, it's not just the US. It's also the European Union, all with the exception of France. France, if you're coming from there, you still have to quarantine for a couple of days. That has enraged the French and caused something like a diplomatic rift between the UK and France. Guys?
And Matt, you mentioned the Delta variant. We know that things are getting worse here in the US. Where does the UK stand when it comes to new cases of COVID?
It's really interesting that you mentioned the Delta variant in the U.S. because here in the UK, scientists have been predicting that the Delta variant would tear through Britain, even as the government decided that they were going to be relaxing a lot of these restrictions in day-to-day life, not just in traveling. But instead, the numbers spiked and then went back down. Now they're hovering at about 24,000, 26,000 every single day. Much, much less than scientists had predicted around this time. Why did this happen? The scientists here are stumped. They don't know why, but it's a good thing for Americans to watch. It's an interesting development. Guys?
Definitely. All right, Matt Bradley. Matt, thanks so much.
NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel joins us now. Good morning, Dr. Patel. Always great to have you. So do you think that traveling is safe for fully vaccinated Americans right now?
Hi, Savannah. Good morning. I do think it's safe within reason. I think you just heard, as Matt said, that you have to test, especially international travel. You have to be very careful about where you're going to and make sure the countries you're traveling to are obviously not going through their own surges, because that can pose a risk to you, even fully vaccinated. But I think the idea of testing both before and even on arrival is not a bad idea to stay safe. And of course, wearing masks. You don't have to have a CDC recommendation. You just need to use your common sense when you're traveling and in a congested space indoors.
Dr. Patel, we just heard Dr. Anthony Fauci say that things are going to get worse. I mean, that's obviously ominous, but what exactly does worse look like at this point, and can it be prevented?
Yeah, great question. So it can and can't be prevented. Here's the part that can be. we can start doing the things kind of as a community to wear the masks and also just be careful about going into, there are a lot of large indoor kind of venues that are still being filled. That is probably something worth reconsidering at the local level, or if you're an individual, don't go there. And then what can't be stopped, Savannah, is that we just heard from Vaughn in Florida, those curves that are going straight up, those still have to peak and then come down. And I think that's what Dr. Fauci is referencing. So that's what we can't really avoid, but we can do in other places where we can actually take individual community actions, and that can make a difference. By the way, we've seen this with previous surges. I hate to say that this looks a lot like previous surges. In many ways it does, and in many ways it doesn't, because this time it's largely with the unvaccinated. We just don't want it to continue for weeks and weeks. We're probably looking at 2 to 4 more weeks of this.
Right. Okay. So let's say right now you're listening and you are vaccinated. Let's talk about what a potential breakthrough case could mean for someone. First, of course, let's keep some important context here. It's only happening to a very small fraction of the millions who are fully vaccinated. But what do the symptoms look like for them, especially compared to someone who's not vaccinated? I mean, is it still safe to say here that you're probably going to get a mild illness if you were to experience a breakthrough case?
Yeah, Savannah, great question. So the majority of breakthrough cases, not just that I'm personally seeing, but that are nationwide and being reported, are very mild compared to unvaccinated people. We're talking, might be a congested nose, a runny nose, feeling just off in some places. But don't be mistaken, though, Savannah, there are breakthrough cases I've seen that have full-on fevers, the cough that was very traditional, and that loss of sense and smell and taste. So when in doubt, you need to just try to get tested. And remember, most breakthrough infections don't have any symptoms in the beginning whatsoever.
Really important reminder there to still get tested if you are feeling that's something that I think we're kind of slacking on a little bit there. All right, Dr. Kavita Patel, thank you so much. Great to see you.
Let's go check on your morning news now weather.
This morning we have Janessa Webb with us. Hi, Janessa. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. I'm here for the positive news. And, I'm all about the kind of chill and cool down that we are seeing across most of the East Coast. It was kind of a fall feel over the weekend, and that's what we're seeing this morning. You might need a light coat as you're stepping out. We're 51 days before the official start of fall, but we are actually seeing temperatures well below average. Also watching a little bit of a rain that's starting to form across the deep south into the southeast, and that will continue to pick up as we go into your Tuesday, even Wednesday afternoon. Minor flooding is possible across these areas from New Orleans all the way into the Carolinas. Tomorrow we'll watch for that flooding possibility across coastal areas of Charleston to the Raleigh-Durham area into Wilmington. So today, daytime highs, we are talking about upper 70s to lower 80s, guys. That's kind of a nice treat.
All right.
Janessa, thank you so much.
Coming up, overcrowding at border facilities is leading ICE to begin processing migrant families.
What the move means for the thousands of immigrants currently seeking asylum, up next. Welcome back. ICE will begin processing migrant families at the southern border in an attempt to alleviate overcrowding at patrol stations. That's according to 2 Homeland Security officials.
It's an unprecedented move for the agency, which usually deals with detentions and removals of undocumented immigrants. Here's NBC News Justice correspondent Julia Ainsley.
So NBC News learned over the weekend that ICE will now be involved in the processing of some immigrant families. That is because there's been so much overcrowding inside Border Patrol stations as the numbers of immigrants, particularly families, have surged this summer coming across the border. That overcrowding, I've heard, has led to COVID-19 spread, other viruses. There have been lice outbreaks, and the problem has gotten so big that a lot of families end up being released into the United States without being given a court date, something the Biden administration has come under a lot of fire and criticism from, especially from Republicans who say this is part of a policy that's not properly enforcing at the border. But now ICE will be involved, alleviating some of that overcrowding. But it's really interesting. This is an unprecedented move. ICE is in charge of enforcement, removals, detention of immigrants. Now they will be in charge of taking in families, giving them COVID tests, doing wellness screenings, even offering COVID vaccines. And when they do depart ICE detention, they will be given a court date and an ankle monitor until they come to court. That is actually normal practice in terms of how you would normally process an immigrant. It's just usually done by Border Patrol rather than ICE. So this response is unprecedented because this is now a problem that the Biden administration doesn't want to continue to go on. And it really shows that this is different from what the president first said when we started to see a surge in the spring, that it was seasonal and it would go down with the warmer months. He was basically called on that because in June, as summer came, the numbers ended up being higher than we've even seen this year. So we'll have to watch and see what happens. People I've spoken to say that ICE is stepping in to do a job here that needs to be done. But of course, there are a lot of people who are skeptical about ICE doing this job that they haven't done before. Right now, they're going to be using facilities that are typically used for families and young children. But the question will be, what else might they be using? And I'm told every option is on the table. They could be looking at facilities all over the country, some that maybe have not been used to house children before. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Meanwhile, we know that overcrowding has also led to children being sent to emergency intake shelters by Health and Human Services. And we've seen reporting from there just last week from whistleblowers saying that those conditions also need to be changed. So lots to focus on as the border continues to surge, and especially as the Delta variant also complicates matters for the Biden administration in terms of how they combat that surge at the border in a humanitarian way that also takes into account the health of Americans and immigrants as well.
Let's take a look at what's making news around the world this morning.
NBC News correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer joins us today. Hey, Janice.
Hey, good morning, guys. We're going to begin here in China, where it's being called the biggest COVID outbreak since Wuhan. Now, we're not talking about huge numbers here. Nationally, there are roughly 50 cases a day, but it's the geographic spread that's worrying. As well, it's the Delta variant. So it's seen the return of familiar restrictions to daily life. Travel is being cut from Beijing to at least 24 cities. Most of the cases are being linked to the airport in Nanjing and a theater in a tourist spot called Zhongjiajie. Now, China takes a zero-tolerance approach to COVID. That's why we have lockdowns and quarantines being imposed in some places. There have been more than 300 local infections in the last 10 days. Wildfires continue to rage across Turkey, Greece, and Italy. Tourists are being evacuated from beach resorts in southwestern Turkey, where Coast Guard vessels are being helped by yachts and private boats to get people out. In Greece, strong winds, hot weather. They have fueled dozens of new fires in the past 48 hours. The temperatures there are hitting 110 degrees Fahrenheit. It's why it's also one of the worst fire seasons in Italy, particularly in the south. In Sicily, hundreds of people are being evacuated from the island, and there are some very dramatic exits being done by boat. And finally, it's time to feel good. Families of athletes competing for the refugee Olympic team have been watching and cheering on from the Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya. Now, there are 29 refugee athletes competing in 12 different sports in Tokyo. And in most cases, these athletes have conquered the odds to make it there. Among them are Rose Lokanyan and Angelina Lohalith. Their families fled violence in South Sudan, and now those families are watching these young women run like the wind. Rose's mother says she wishes for her daughter to be, quote, granted a pure heart and to run with it as she always does. And that's your look at what's making news around the world.
That's a lovely quote.
Yes, oh, it is. And it's just
nice.
It's so amazing to watch the family members see someone that they love in this position. It's so cool getting all these videos and such.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you, Janice.
Thanks, Janice. Coming up, that sweeping bipartisan infrastructure package is now one step closer to the president's desk.
When we could finally see the highly anticipated bill up for a vote next. The lineup at Lollapalooza saw a major last-minute change yesterday. Rapper DaBaby was dropped as a headliner for the popular Chicago festival after he made homophobic remarks at the Rolling Loud festival last week. DaBaby targeted gay men and people living with HIV and AIDS in his comments. The rapper defended his rant on social media, but has been widely condemned by celebrities like Dua Lipa, Elton John, and Madonna. Lollapalooza responded by dropping him from the show, saying the festival was, quote, founded on diversity, inclusivity, respect, and love, Be interesting to see if there are any other ramifications for his comments.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's quite the update there. Thank you, Joe. Now, after weeks of wrangling and negotiations, the long-awaited bipartisan infrastructure bill has finally been released. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer submitted the proposal in a rare Sunday session and says he's optimistic about the next steps.
Given how bipartisan the bill is and how much work has already been put in to get the details right, I believe the Senate can quickly process relevant amendments and pass this bill in a matter of days. Then I will move the Senate along the second track for our infrastructure effort and take up the budget resolution.
NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Leanne Caldwell is with us now to break this down. Good morning, Leanne. All right. I mean, we finally got something to break down. I know yesterday afternoon you tweeted this picture of this massive stack, but we still didn't know what was in it. Now we finally have some information. So this bipartisan group of 10 senators spent more than a month writing the bill. What is in it? What do we know now? What are you looking out for? And what are the next steps for getting it passed?
Good morning, Savannah. Well, it's a 2,702-page bill, so it's a massive piece of legislation that is governing the roads, bridges, broadband, rail. There's a lot in this bill. Now, where it goes next, it is brought up officially on the Senate floor, and now there's going to be attempts to change the legislation, perhaps by senators who don't like what is in the bill. Now, those amendments are going to have a 60-vote threshold to pass, so that's a very high bar. So it's going to be very difficult to actually change this legislation. But this amendment process could go on for days. The goal of Leader Schumer is to have it passed out of the Senate by the end of the week, which is pretty optimistic, especially considering how long things have taken even to get this bill released. But this process is going to go on in the Senate this week, and we'll be watching very closely how it breaks down and if any major changes are made.
Yes, absolutely. All right, now let's switch over to something else. In the House, GOP leader Kevin McCarthy is getting blowback for a comment about House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Tell us what happened.
That's right. So Saturday night, he was the keynote speaker at a Tennessee Republican Party annual fundraising dinner. The Tennessee delegation, they gave him an oversized gavel, and he said that I want you to watch Nancy Pelosi hand me that gavel, is when he says that he's going to become Speaker of the House after the midterm elections. He goes on to say it'll be hard not to hit her with it. Now, those remarks have received a lot of backlash from a lot of Democratic colleagues coming to Pelosi's defense. Her deputy chief of staff tweeted after this remark that a threat of violence to someone who is the target of a January 6th assassination attempt from your fellow Trump supporters is irresponsible and disgusting. The relationship between Pelosi and McCarthy is horrible, Savannah.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, now let's talk about the federal eviction moratorium. So it expired this weekend. Of course, that opened up millions of Americans to the threat of eviction, but there is a push in the House to extend this moratorium. What is the latest there?
There is Representative Cori Bush. She has been homeless before in her life, and she started an impromptu protest on the steps of the Capitol Friday night. She has not really left. She's still there this morning, and she is calling on Democratic leaders to either bring back the House to vote on something, having the Senate act as well, or the White House doing something. There's no immediate plan on who's going to act. So for the time being, this moratorium has expired, Savannah.
All right, Leanne Caldwell catching us up on everything happening on the Hill. Thanks so much.
Since the early days of the internet, Democrats have dominated online fundraising, but now, just in time for the 2022 midterms, Republicans are starting to catch up. NBC News senior digital politics reporter Alex Seitz-Wald joins us now with his latest reporting. Alex, good morning to you. So when we talk about online fundraising, we're talking often about small dollar donations, which have become increasingly important in funding campaigns and political parties. So how were Republicans able to start closing the gap?
Yeah, well, as you said, Democrats had dominated this since about 2004, when Howard Dean was kind of the first major presidential candidate to go online to look for money. It's since become a multi-billion-dollar source of funds for Democrats. Republicans have tried for years to catch up. They've had kind of false starts, and it took until really Donald Trump for that to change. He came in with an unusually strong online fundraising presence, going all the way back to his Republican primary in 2016. And then once he was in the White House and head of the Republican Party, he kind of pressured the rest of the party to get behind one single online platform that's called Win Red. It's an answer to the Democratic version, which is Act Blue. And the reason that this is important is because once a donor is in the system, they can give to any candidate super easily. It's like Amazon for candidates. It stores all your information so you don't have to sign up every time. It makes it so much simpler. So that just started in 2019. Took a minute to get going, but now they've raised $2.3 billion since their launch.
Yeah, so Alex, I want to ask more about that. How much money are we talking about, and how does that compare to the more traditional fundraising methods from big corporate donors and other well-known groups?
Yeah, this is serious money. I mean, it's no longer kind of a supplement. It's essential for a lot of campaigns. And, you know, $8.9 billion is how much Democrats have raised since they first got into this through Act Blue. Republicans now $2.3 billion. So, you know, that's with a B. These are serious sums of money. And it's really the future. It's the way that candidates are funding their campaigns. There's still traditional fundraising that absolutely plays a key role. And it, you know, varies by candidate and committee. But you have to do both of these things now to compete in the modern political climate.
All right, Alex, fascinating report. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up, a disheartening roadblock for Americans looking for a bit of an escape this summer.
Yeah, vacation rental scams are unfortunately on the rise. We will tell you, though, how to spot them up next. Now, as more people reserve long-awaited getaways on home rental sites, more scammers are posing as property owners, stealing money and ruining vacations, of course, at the same time.
So what do you do about it? Well, NBC News correspondent Katie Beck has more on how to protect yourself before you book.
After driving 15 hours from St. Louis, Missouri to Virginia Beach, Missy Bursing was ready to feel sand beneath her feet.
We're excited. We hadn't done it in 2 years.
But hopes for a dream trip became a nightmare for Bursing and 16 family members.
Did it occur to you, I've been scammed?
I think when we knew the code didn't work.
The security code to open the rental home didn't work, provided by an alleged Airbnb host. First connected on the site, he'd spoken with her by phone several times, offering house rules, even the Wi-Fi code. Suddenly, he was unreachable.
It was just disbelief. I'm like, how? Like, this is really happening.
Unfortunately, it's happening more often. According to FBI data, the number of rental scams jumped 17% last year. Online scammers swiping pictures of properties they don't own, posting them for rent, and making off with the money from post-pandemic travelers desperate for escape.
Real estate agents say demand for summer rentals is at an all-time high and inventory is extremely low, which they say is the ripe conditions for rental scams.
And they show up and their dreams are dashed.
Gail Bucker manages properties in Virginia Beach and says she's been forced to turn families away. A first sign of scam for renters should be the price.
And they advertise it really low. So that's the bait. The bait is it's cheap.
Other red flags, rental listings on social media sites, requests to wire payment to the owner directly, requests to adjust dates of the rental, and owner unreachable by phone. Airbnb refunded Bursing's family for the rental and travel cost and banned the scam host from their platform. Still, they say bad actors are out there.
We are seeing scam artists who are going to really extraordinary and sophisticated lengths to make people believe that they are on Airbnb.
Bursing's family returned home with packed cars and a sad reality.
The fact that people are out there being so dishonest and the fact that it's so easy for them to be dishonest.
Words of caution after a vacation stolen by a scam. Katie Beck, NBC News, Virginia Beach.
Time now for our CNBC Money Minute, the biggest financial headlines of the day and why they matter to you.
CNBC's Contessa Brewer is with us this morning. Hi, Contessa.
Hi, Savannah. Hi, Joe. Zoom has agreed to pay $85 million as part of a lawsuit over privacy violations and so-called Zoom bombing. Paid subscribers who are part of this class action will get a 15% refund or $25, whichever is greater, and free users can get $15. Zoom will also train employees on handling user data and privacy and develop security features to prevent unauthorized people from gaining access to meetings. Disney's Jungle Cruise rode to a better than expected opening at the box office, taking in $34 million, according to ComScore. The movie, which stars Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, has made nearly $92 million worldwide, when you include the $30 million from people who paid $30 to watch it on Disney+. Johnson has publicly endorsed the hybrid release strategy, saying it's the best way to provide consumer choice. But of course, Joe Savannah, we saw Scarlett Johansson actually suing Disney over the very same process, saying it's unfair to her and the way she gets paid.
Yeah, it is a big debate that is going to be unfolding, that the pandemic has sort of accelerated because of people staying at home. So we'll see what happens there.
Hearing a lot more about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Contessa.
All right, now, pandemic purge or pandemic splurge. Some use lockdown to clean, from decluttering the closet to organizing the budget. Others really leaned in on online shopping.
But with inflation on the rise and more businesses opening up, balancing a budget may be a bit overwhelming. NBC News senior business reporter Ben Popkin has some tips you can bank on.
Pre-pandemic, I was just save, and think about my future, and now I'm still doing that smartly by investing and whatnot, but I'm also placing a bigger emphasis on living life.
I didn't spend on gasoline, transportation, eating out. I was able to save because of that.
With the pandemic, I kind of stopped spending a lot of money.
At first, I thought I'm gonna save, so I'm not traveling, the pandemic, so I'm gonna save, but now I see that I'm spending more. And I don't like that.
Personal savings skyrocketed during the pandemic, with remote workers cutting out spending on commuting and other daily expenses, and families banking their stimulus checks. According to the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, in April 2020, at the peak of lockdown restrictions, Americans saved a record 33.7% of their income, compared to just 7.5% the previous year. That savings rate has now come back down, though it's still higher than pre-pandemic levels. But consumer spending is on the rise, with expenditures on services growing year over year for the first time in 13 months.
The pandemic was a wake-up call for each of us.
A great way to start sorting through your new finances is through a wallet edit. Get your wallet, a folder, a table, your computer or smartphone, and a trash can. Put your wallet on the table and completely empty it.
You have to take the time to kind of take a step back, pull out your physical wallet, take all the contents out, sort and categorize, discard items that you're not using or needing, then you're going to install back in. And then the biggest thing is the maintenance. So figuring out, what works best for you and your lifestyle.
Take a hard look at the credit and debit cards that remain. For instance, did the free introductory period end on any, and now you're racking up interest? And go online and make sure you're up to date on all their balances. Go through your payment history line by line, see how you're really spending. Are you spending more than you're earning? You need to adjust.
Many people aren't in tune with their finances, right? So they really don't have an awareness of everything that's in their wallet and how it could benefit them.
Tools like a simple spreadsheet or apps like You Need a Budget or Honeydew are good to get a handle on your personal finance. Our friends over at CNBC have a good budgeting rule of thumb. It's called the 50-30-20 rule.
You simply need to divide your after-tax income into 3 broad categories. First, 50% of your paycheck should go toward things you need. Next, 20% of your paycheck should go toward your savings and investments. Finally, 30% of your paycheck should go to things you want.
If you're lucky enough to be in a good financial place right now, there's nothing wrong with splurging on a kayak or karaoke or a weekend getaway. Just make sure your other financial goals are being met and your fun budget stays in budget.
It's not about materialistic stuff no more. It's like everything changed. My perspective on things changed. If I'm spending, I'm investing.
Just have a cushion, try to pay down on my credit card debt.
But it's never a bad time to dig into your spending. Do you still need that grocery delivery membership? Do you have debt spread across several credit cards? Are some of them low balance and you can pay them off? Or can you do balance transfers and move debt from high interest cards to low interest cards? Then maybe you have some time to think about whether you should adjust your focus on rewards programs.
For many people, whether you are someone that you vacation a lot or you spend a lot of time at the grocery store, we all want to be able to add cashback rewards to our life.
32% of U.S. adults said their financial discipline improved during the pandemic, and 95% expect those newfound habits to stick, according to a report by Northwestern Mutual. To stay on track, you shouldn't necessarily purge or cancel credit cards you may need for an emergency source of funds. But shuffling out some high-interest, poor reward cards into the desk drawer and keeping lower interest and better rewards cards as your main daily card should help you stay on top of your finances. Now you can go back to a little more spending with a little less guilt.
Now is the time to definitely plug in, prioritize. Think about ways that you've been spending in the past and think about what has changed for you.
When you have an organized wallet, it's the foundation for feeling better and feeling financially sound.
That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.